we're back to everyone's favorite wallet-devouring game, Genshin Impact. Since I recently started catching my alternate account up to my main account, I realized that there were some things I wished someone had told me early game to prepare me for the mid to end game. Imagine quotation marks around the word end. So let's not waste any more time and talk about 5 things I wish I had been told before starting Genshin. When I was brainstorming things that might have helped me in Genshin's early game, I asked some of my friends who also play what they wanted to hear in the early game, and we all agreed that knowing the commitment and how time-consuming it was in the beginning. This issue comes from Archon quests, world quests, and character quests, but the most time-consuming of all is the exploration and the Oculus hunting. While the quests can be entertaining, they lose the entertainment value after a while, especially if they aren't voiced. On the other hand, exploration and Oculus hunting are some of the main ways new players can obtain Prima Gems or Stamina, both of which are essential to playing and experiencing Genshin to a heightened degree. But other than those rewards, there's not really any other incentive to get each area to 100%. Also, not everyone has the time to invest so much time into this game, and sometimes it gets annoying. I think everyone within and outside of the Genshin community can agree that Genshin has one of the worst rates of any game. Other than the 90 wish pity and the potential for losing your 50-50, it requires the player to have 180 wishes saved up to guarantee the character that they want. In most cases for free-to-play players, it's unreasonable and unobtainable if they want 2 characters in the same patch or 2 characters with a banner in between. This is also a quite lofty goal to reach for small spenders such as players who buy the Welkin or Battle Pass. Recently, while trying to help one of my friends start Genshin for the first time, I couldn't help but feel a bit disappointed at how happy they were to try and pull Zhongli, but when I told them how the system worked, they got let down immediately. I also know what the horrible rates can deter newer players from joining because of how unfair the game is toward players who don't spend enough money on the game. This is not only an issue with the character banners, but even the weapon banners. Originally, there was no epitomized path for weapons, so you truly had no guaranteed chance of getting the weapon you wanted if you were unlucky. Sure, it was partially fixed with the epitomized path, but it still required a whopping 240 pulls to guarantee the weapon you wanted, which, unless I'm wrong, is one of the highest pities of any gacha game. I feel as though the difficulty in obtaining characters and weapons isn't fair to new players who aren't fully aware of all the ways to obtain primos or who are unaware of how to utilize their resources properly. I think it's important before starting Genshin to be aware of the unfairness of the gacha system and be prepared to lose or be unable to obtain the characters you want. Piggybacking off of the previous point, being aware of your resources in the early game is essential for proper account growth. It might be enticing to level up and grow your characters right after obtaining them, and you may feel urged to level and invest in every new character you obtain. This is not something I or many high AR players would recommend. I would recommend consulting a low AR tier list before dipping your resources in multiple different characters rather than pouring all of your resources into one good character. It usually wouldn't be an issue if resources had ample ways to obtain them, but level up books and ascension materials as well as Mora are quite scarce for beginning players. I was a culprit of this too. I usually would level up and put a lot of my resources into multiple characters, but I would suggest most newer players only invest in 4 diverse characters to truly get the most value from their resources. This is also advice I would give new players when they ask whether or not to spend their resin on artifact domains, to which I immediately shake my head. It is a waste, in my opinion, for low AR players, usually 45 or below, to spend their valuable resin on uncertain upgrades rather than certain upgrades like talents, levels, or weapon levels. Especially with the recent flame wars on Twitter about boycotting Genshin, some members will be a bit discouraged from seeing new players coming to Genshin since it would mean that there is still hype around the game, thus discouraging Hoyo from developing new and better things for the game, if new players are still increasing. I must preface that not all veteran players view new players in this light, but for new players, I would suggest staying off of any Genshin Impact related social media forums or posts, since either most of them are aimed at veteran players or might discourage and guilt new players for joining Genshin. While this isn't as big of an issue as the other 4 items on this list, I still hope that new players are aware of the dichotomy of the Genshin Impact community on social media, which is known for being toxic by default. So, if you are a new player watching this, or even if you are a mid or veteran player, don't be discouraged by Genshin Twitter. Hell, you might even get a laugh out of the people arguing back and forth without getting personally involved. I feel as though I shouldn't really mention this point, but it still surprises some of my veteran Genshin friends when I tell them this. But seriously, complete the events. There are wondrous amounts of rewards for doing the bare minimum. You don't need to be the best player nor have the most diverse cast of characters available to you to complete the minimum requirements for the Primogem rewards. Unlike Honkai Impact 3rd, in which you must complete the maximum that the game mode has to offer to obtain the most rewards. Additionally, completing the flagship events gives the Crowns of Insight, which help bring the character skills from 9 to 10, which if you main the characters can give a nice additional boost to damage, healing, or buffs based on the skill that you level up to 10. Lastly, the flagship events usually also give a bit of valuable lore based on the characters involved, which is now even more easily accessed with the Start Anyway option that Hoyo gave to allow new players to play the events if they were previously locked behind Archon or character quests. Even if the events are time-gated, it is critical to participate in them whenever possible because the rewards usually also include level-up materials for both characters and weapons, which can later be useful when necessary. Hopefully these 5 things help newer players in Genshin Impact. Whilst there are multiple different videos and guides for newer players on how to start properly in Genshin Impact, I think it is important for newer players to find their own way to play the game, since there are multiple different ways in which you can interact with the game. I simply summarized 5 of the most general topics that are involved with engaging with the game. Anyway, I hope that this helped newer players or entertained veteran players. If you have any other things that you feel would be important for newer players to be aware of, please put them in the comments below, or like the video if you found any of my top 5 things worthwhile for new players. With that being said, have a good morning, good day, or good night.